Welcome back to the X podcast, and got a whole table full of friends today. Zachary Brown.
Hello.
How you doing? Trae Castles.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Let me have Mr. Tim.
More or less.
Mr. Tim.
I didn't want to bring it up.
More or
How are we
less.
doing?
Good.
Doing great.
Good. So today is going to be an exciting day. We're going to talk about AI. I feel like this is our second or third time talking about AI.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this will be a fun table to have that conversation with. I feel like I'm just going to learn from you three because I feel like y'all I listen to podcasts, but I feel like y'all deep dive. I know you study stuff a lot. For those that have not met Trae and you're not part of our faith community, he leads our creative worship production a whole lot at the church. And because I think communications, that's your degree, right?
Yeah.
Because of communications being your degree, because of production technology. And I also feel like just your brain, this stuff fascinates you, any inevitable technologies.
Yeah.
So I feel like you just deep dive and you just always have fascinating insight. I feel like you're always saying some crazy article. I feel like we should have pressed.
Lately, I've been watching movies because every new
It's
movie
true.
is about AI.
Did you see the new one on Netflix
Atlas?
that just
I
dropped?
just watched it.
Was it good?
Eh.
It looked kind of lame.
Atlas.
I'm not gonna lie.
Atlas.
Yeah.
With Jennifer Lopez.
Oh, yeah.
I heard it was okay.
It's okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is interesting because and I told you guys about The Creator. Was that it?
Mm-hmm.
You guys see that? It was really good.
Saw
Did
half
you
of
see it?
Yeah, it was on a flight. So
Yeah.
by the time we land, I'm just now realizing the plane landed. I never saw the rest of it.
That's a really good movie, and they're starting to put very unique twists on the future of AI. I don't want to ruin that one. That was a good movie, The Creator. I think that's what it was called.
I'll have to look that up. I
Yeah.
didn't heard of
Atlas
it.
was it was all right.
But you've been reading some interesting books.
Yeah.
On AI. What was it? 2084.
Yeah, so 2084, one I recommended during the last series, John Lennox talks about AI. And I think, though, his book, so what kind of maybe inspired this conversation was the book that he caused him to write 2084. I don't know that for sure, but I'm pretty sure he wrote that as a response to a book by a guy named Harari. Yuval Noah Harari, who wrote a book. He's a pretty well-known author. It's a New York Best Time seller for his book called Sapiens. He's a humanist, takes a very humanist and secular perspective on things. But he wrote a book called Homo Deus, which you know what that means, right?
Homo Deus.
Homo Deus. You know what those two words mean?
Divine human.
Yeah. Human divinity.
Human divinity. I've been
divine,
studying
human
that.
God. Human. I mean, that's where you.
You also mentioned that to us the other day when you threw out all these make-believe boards and we asked you within that.
But
So you've been studying all this. And then, one of the things that you mentioned whenever this podcast comes out is we just celebrate a lot of graduates, not just on Sunday, but a lot of people in our community, a lot of people we all know have been graduating. And so an ongoing conversation, since COVID, when it comes to remote, hybrid, the future of work, but especially with the emergence of AI, is what does the future of work look like? What does the future of the workplace look like? And AI has quickly gone from the future to the present. And what does that look like as far as tools, collaboration, all of that? And it's a fascinating, I think exciting, for some people terrifying thing to imagine. Not just for maybe their current jobs, but for students that are looking into what field do I go into?
Yeah.
I was watching some TED Talk, maybe it was today. Mustafa, you probably know his name.
I've heard of
Mustafa
him.
was something.
Mm-hmm.
You know him?
What's the TED Talk about?
Soleimani. It's just all on. Basically, it's called "What Is an AI?" And it started with his 7-year-old kid was asking all these optimistic, naive questions. I'm so excited about AI, and will they be able to cure this disease? Will we be able to do this? And then finally he said, "Dad, what is an AI?" And this is a guy that since the last 3 or 4 decades has been working in AI. He's I remember 10 years ago the idea that AI could be creative or empathetic was insane.
Right.
Me even mentioning AGI, you were looked at as a pariah. It was oh, that's 50, 60 years ahead. He said, but now it's here.
Now it's.
He said, but I found myself getting almost defensive when my son asked me. He said, I found myself wanting to airbag it with, well, it's not a human and it's not this and it's not this and it's just this. And he's he said, my son's honest question of what is an AI made me just search my soul, even though I've done this for 3 or 4 decades of like, what is an AI, and is the word tool really enough to describe what this is going to become and what it's becoming? And he went through like the course of human history and how there's just been these explosions of tools from wood to fire, then industrial revolution, and then to, in the 80s, computer technology. And he said now, the obvious thing is we're on the wave of the most consequential new iteration of technology that our species has ever known. Yeah. And what does that look like? What does that look like for tools, workplace? And so what do you think? Like how should people maybe that are just graduating or looking at fields?
Well, that was the angle that I found most fascinating. So part of it was reading Homo Deus and just having I don't want to say he's a futurist, because I mean maybe he is a little bit. He paints a very vivid picture of what the world's going to look like within the next 100 years. And his idea, again, this isn't as much the conversation about AI and workplace is a portion of his concept of his book, because it's more about this idea of us solving the last final problem of humanity, which is death. And that's where he comes up with divinity, the idea, and he thinks that we're going to solve that within 100 years or less. I mean, it is strange hearing somebody talk about it. Because
can he hurry?
Here's the thing. Again, there would be probably another fascinating conversation to have about this idea of if you could solve death, what other problems do you create? And I was waiting for him, because as he was saying some of that, he was like, "Oh, I think we could, solve the problem of death." And my mind immediately went, "Wait, what Pandora's box did we just open up?"
Yeah.
Like, so wait, if you don't die, do people stop having kids? Because if people don't stop having kids, we already have resource issues at 8 billion people on the planet, and it's growing so fast. Could you imagine if people just stopped dying? And so it's a kind of almost a strange thing to think about. But in that conversation, he really leans heavily on it's really the human technology merging, and from I would say from an atheistic perspective, all it is evolution.
It reminds me of the show I watched. It's like a mini series called Devs. It was on Hulu. It was like a 6-episode series, and it was. Have you heard of it?
Devs.
Devs, yeah, DEVS. It was like kind of that concept of like basically finding AGI, and probably like a lot of like AI stories. It's like the evolution from being human to being now your consciousness is elsewhere. It was a wild show. The guy who played Ron Swanson was on it, and so like
you watch a lot of Fringe shows.
Yeah.
What are your other Fringe shows right now?
Watching Dark Matter on Apple TV. It's a book I read by Blake Crouch, and it's
yeah, I've heard that.
It's awesome. The show is okay.
Is it about dark matter?
It's about.
Would I like this?
You would like it. Yeah, it's about like, I don't know if it's about. I mean, yeah, it is about dark matter, but it's about like timelines and multiple universes.
Gotcha.
And three-body problem.
Similar to like three-body problem. They take this concept, but it's not really about that concept.
Yeah.
And they create a kind of a story.
Okay, sorry, but Devs.
Yeah, but it reminds me of Devs because like, I mean that's where that goes. It goes into like, can we defeat death, and what does that look like if we do? And their interpretation of it was pretty fascinating.
Yeah. Transhumanism is kind of the concept of the idea of merging humanity with technology and doing away with death. It maybe it's not all physical, like you said. It's kind of more the consciousness and where it exists. I think too, maybe before we've thrown out AGI, and I wonder if we should probably just mention or explain what AGI is, because people may not know. They're like adjusted gross income. Like, wait, this is what's on our federal tax form? No, it's the artificial general intelligence, which is it's creating an intelligence that could then basically think on its own.
Think and feel
in that kind of a mental, emotional way, but on its own, to where it is now creating and almost has a mind of its own.
It's like beyond it's beyond using available resources.
Yeah.
It's creating those those resources.
Superhuman intelligence it's also referred to as. And so the fear is in dystopian stories and other things, right? The fear is that we help create technically the way it's kind of played out is we are helping create these algorithms that create with narrow artificial intelligence and other things that will learn, and then itself will create or move to super intelligence or AGI.
Yeah.
And when it does that, well, that's like now we're at Skynet and Terminator, and you know what I mean? Like it, and so what's fascinating is in this book, because I mean, again, if somebody wants an interesting read on AI, Homo Deus is interesting. It's not a faith-based book at all. I mean, the guy basically kind of says religion is worthless. We don't need it anymore. It served its purpose thousands of years back, saying that's how we solved whatever the ones. How do we solve disease? How do we solve wars, disease, and I forget. There were three main things. He says these are the things that have plagued humanity ever since. And he kind of, I feel like it's definitely a slight on religion, and I think he takes a pretty, I don't know, pedestrian view of it, in my opinion.
You were pretty offended.
It's just kind of like offended, but it's just like no. I actually enjoy reading books of people that have different, because it just helps me understand how they think.
Right.
But I feel like it was shortchanged quite a bit. It's almost kind of like, well, nobody knew how to solve these problems, so they prayed to their God and they sacrificed people to their God so that they'd have rain, and that way they wouldn't starve to death because of drought. Well, yes, in ancient times they did that, but let's not dump modern faith into that category.
So as the three of you that I feel like are way more knowledgeable about this than me, I have a question. One of the guys I was listening to said, this is his view, if one of the biggest priorities with an optimistic view of AI is to prioritize safety and to make sure that AI serves and amplifies humanity, he said he feels like it's crucial that we have metaphors that help us navigate what this oncoming AI is, that we actually have mental maps of how we view it. Going back to, okay, is it just a tool? We know it's not biological. How do we view it? So I'm curious, any of the three of you, like, how do you have a way that you view it? Like, do you have like a mental structure of like how you process?
I feel like I'm pretty naive though. Like, as much as like
you use it a lot,
use
probably
it a lot,
more than any of us at this table.
But I feel like in the like doomsday type mindset, I'm very naive because, I mean, for better or for worse, because I almost look at it now, I mean, and ask the question like, okay, when the internet came around, people freaked out. When the print, I mean, go back to printing press, it was like, it's like, and so I don't think I have wrapped my mind around, and I've read a lot about, artificial intelligence and the dangers of it, but I don't think I've wrapped my mind around the actual reality of it being dangerous, which might be a problem. But
and this person is very like optimistic. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I think what made me think that was explain that TED Talk and how like this is like one of the most, I forget what you said, but a pivotal moment in like figuring out how to use it, or one of the most pivotal is and I've heard that a lot. Like, this is the most crucial time to figure out how to navigate this technology. And I'm like, what about all the other crucial times? Like, we survived. And I don't know, but
but this time it's gonna turn on us.
Well, I think you bring a good perspective though, because as I was thinking about how to answer your question, my mind went to, a mental map for right now or what it's going to be in the future, because it seems like everyone is panicking about what's going to happen in the future. But to your point, we don't really know what's going to happen. And so you can expend a lot of energy and you can run the hamster wheel a little bit trying to figure it out. But I think right now it's a different conversation, because right now it's more of a tool.
Well, and I think the reason he's bringing it up now is it was interesting. He's like, industrial revolution. Oh my gosh. Changed. He said, we're naive if we think the future of humanity is not the progression of technology.
Right.
He said industrial revolution happened, but horrible work conditions where we like destroyed a lot of lives. He said, we discover oil. That's great. We polluted the planet. He said, we have an opportunity with this to say, how can we do better? And he's like, we already know like the global and personal ramifications. I mean, if it does a fraction of its potential, we can cure climate issues, maybe healthcare, education, the medical possibilities. He said, but when you look at how does human flourishing happen with it mentally, psychologically? If any of the doomsday things are possible, like how do you mitigate that? He's like, how do you, the way he looked at it, I thought was interesting. Maybe it's just semantics. He's like, I look at this in the same way we discovered fire, then electricity, then technology. He said, this is like the biggest iteration for the future of humanity. He said, I look at this as not just, okay, we have a new tool, but there is on us the introduction of a digital species.
Yeah.
He said, these are not just going to be tools, but companions. He said, in the future, like your AI, he said, I think different businesses are going to have AI, and it's going to be like, oh, that's my colleague that I don't just like get information from, but share with.
Well, I would say the point about the species. Okay, so that's the point that Yuval Harari makes in his book. But in seeing this in an evolutionary perspective or food chain, he paints the picture more of this is the next iteration. That's what Homo Deus is. That's what he wrote. Like you have, Homo sapiens. And his first book was called Sapiens. So he's someone who kind of lives in this vein. This book, Homo Deus, is almost that's the next level of the. Let me say this: the highest on the pecking order. He says we have been because of our intelligence have been the highest on the pecking order. So we have done whatever, and he basically kind of flips the script and he says, "What if the next version of species, the Homo Deus, or this digital or transhuman, again, he says, what if they treat us the way we treat the lower species on the no, and so he uses this, it kind of gets you to think. It's like, and he goes through talking about how we've treated chickens and how we've treated pigs, and not just like using them for food, but he talks about locking them in really small spaces, just like horrible experience for life. That's a lot what PETA and all that kind of, speak about. And he's like, what if they treat us? What if they end up in power and they treat us the way we've treated the previous species or the other ones? How would we feel about that? So
if you look at AI and human beings from a simply materialist standpoint, the implications are terrifying.
That's what I'm just telling you. We have a different perspective, I think, having a faith lens, but it's different when you.
Well, so to roughly answer your question, I think for me, the way I think about these things is there has to be some sort of framework, right? And so I think you gotta, and I don't have answers, but more just a way to think about AI and our current societies. What does it look like for us to, from a human standpoint, set up some, and this is where it's going to take cooperation amongst governments, amongst nations. What are some standards that we can begin to adopt and say, okay, this is the standards for how we use AI and its function within our human society. And then I think from there it goes down to a more granular level, business. Okay, what are acceptable business practices when it comes to AI, social media practices that come to AI? And then I think the last framework, and probably maybe the most important one, is a personal framework for how you view AI and how it comes from. So when it comes to coming up with these mental maps that you're talking about, I think starting from each one of those spots and beginning to ask yourself the question, how do we, or where does AI fit into each one of these sectors of our lives, and beginning to think about the implications is a good place to start.
Yeah, I wonder, part of me, the more I look into it, I'm like, I wonder what's going to be more powerful, like the global, like macro implications of AI, or even the personal ones. Like they're talking about, the craziest thing is, and we're seeing this, I think, with some of the AI stuff we have now, is like, there's the IQ aspect of AI and the amount of like information it consumes. But in the future, like the perfect AI is not just going to have perfect IQ, but EQ.
Oh yeah.
Well, and AQ, like they talked about in the future, AI is going to be like organizing community neighborhood picnics for elderly people. It's going to be helping people transition in death when they get a diagnosis they need to process. Like, I mean, I don't know. It's nuts. I'm curious though. I was going to ask you from a functional level, how do you see it affecting job market, jobs, what people?
I mean, I think there's a reality that it will diminish, if not eliminate, some positions. But I think in my mind, it's like, I remember sitting around this table like the week after ChatGPT dropped, right? I think that was the last time it was on here.
You blew all our minds that tech meeting.
And at that time, people were like, graphic designers are done, video editors are done, like video, and it's like, I think I said then, it's like, well, you really just figure out like, okay, if you have this skill and this ability, this should like as an artist, this should allow you to be even better at it, right? If you have this skill as a marketer, I mean, I think one thing, I'm really curious what like the search engine optimization jobs, that's kind of a, I don't know a whole lot about it, but now I do because I've used ChatGPT, and like I'm not gonna, like I'm not gonna pay somebody thousands of dollars a month to optimize our website.
Do you feel comfortable? Because I feel like you really do use it a lot.
I do.
Do you feel comfortable? Like, what are like some things that may would surprise people? Like, it could be personal or job that you're like,
I think, I mean, like I was saying, like for our website, it's, and it's, I feel like I've just scratched the surface, but like search engine optimization is one of those things that's like it's a pretty routine process. It's like, hey, I need you to help me figure out our meta description. It's a website description that shows up in Google. I need you to help me figure out a keyword so that when Google, for this page, and I drop the page in, and it'll give me some information. I'll modify. A lot of times what works best is when you like take what they give you, you give it feedback, and it's kind of a back and forth until it's like, okay, that's what I want. So I mean,
and this is still ChatGPT.
ChatGPT for that. I mean, even look at like people on our creative team. I mean, simple ways that they've used it is we've had a couple of videos we've made, and we used generative fill for some of the backgrounds, and it's something that you put your creativity into it. And you can get out something pretty cool. Simple things like extending, like this screen behind us is kind of an odd size, and so sometimes we'll have graphics that have been created, and we'll use AI to fill the whole screen and then modify it. It's like really takes out a lot of smaller tasks. I've used it a whole lot in regards to HR because it's like I need
HR policies.
Yeah, I have some really specific questions, so I'll upload a whole lot of documentation of hundreds and hundreds of pages of, or link to an article, and I'm like, hey, does this answer my question? Here's my specific question, or here's a job offer template that we currently had. Does it have everything that we not legally, but everything that we need to have in this document? And it'll go through like that. And hey, you should put something like this. Well, that's not worded the way I would write it or the way that our church would write it. Let me modify that. But it, I mean, those are some ways.
I feel like what you're describing is a true, I want to say, digital assistant. It's like having an employee.
You know what else though? Like it is. I mean, I think another thing. So I'm a pretty big introvert. I don't really like to think out loud. So a lot of times with let me say real coworkers, real friends,
real people.
I don't do that. It's like I've got to formulate thoughts, and then it's like, hey, here's what I'm thinking. With ChatGPT, I can literally just spit things out, and maybe that's a personal thing.
You feel freedom,
but it's like I can just spit ideas out, and I'll just talk for about 2 or 3 minutes. And I'll say, here's what I want to accomplish. Can any of that point toward what I'm trying to do? And so that's been pretty handy, like on my drive to and from work.
That's so fascinating. I didn't even think about how AI could be impacted, influenced, leveraged based on even personality. That's fascinating. What you're using now is this paid version?
Yeah.
And they're not expensive.
It's like $20 a month.
Here's how I almost started wondering about things. I'm curious your thoughts on this. And this may be even just like a false construct, but I started wondering to myself, okay, in the future when it comes to jobs, could it be 3 different baskets? What is going to be replaced by AI? What's going to be a co-laborer with AI? And what should be removed from AI? Like part of me, the whole thing of what was it they asked? We may have talked about this before, but there was a stat that came out a couple weeks ago on Gen Z. If they made it where you couldn't do self-checkout anymore. Like 75% said they would never go into a grocery store again. But that's why I'm wondering. Like, I wonder if in the future your retro restaurants are going to be like, hey, come to this restaurant. We have real human waiters, Like, I almost started wondering that. Or is that going to be kind of those things?
I could see that.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I'm curious. Start with Trae, whoever else, but like, do those three do you think of it in those three baskets, and which jobs do you think will land in those or should land in those?
I mean, I think the first one I've heard the first two that you said, jobs that are going to just be gone, replaced by AI completely. The other ones, I heard a guy that we follow a lot, all of us at this table, Scott Galloway, he was talking about AI. He said that even the ones that are going to be replaced, they might not be replaced by AI, but they're going to be replaced by humans using AI. So I think AI is going to come into just about every job imaginable. Will there be jobs where there's no AI at all? I don't know.
Those are Russ's three baskets, so they could be wrong. Maybe that's not realistic.
Archaeologists.
Apparently,
based on that one,
which I find that so odd because you would think that could be trained.
Well, I think AI would be involved in.
I think you would use it to map out things, sonar, underground, other things like that first.
I think there's a lot of trades that people would think, oh, that would never be replaced, But I think you've got some stats on that I think would change that. But
so in the book, Harari, he does a really good job more in the back half of kind of painting a picture of the world with AI.
Yeah.
Some of which replaces it, which is what made me kind of think of this would be an interesting conversation. As we mentioned, it's end of May recording this, it'll come out in June, and it's graduation time. And I started to think, as I was listening to him talk, I started to think, man, there are some fields I don't think I would go into, even if I was interested in those fields today, because of what I would project in 10 years. I mean, if you look at how fast the technology has been moving, like you said, it wasn't that long ago we were sitting here going, ChatGPT can do that, and
it can write a poem,
and now it's like, no, it can produce a entire theater. It can produce, like, it's insane the speed they're saying now. I think it's doubling, and technology is doubling every 2 years.
Damn.
It used to be like it was a decade to do this, and now it's every 2 years, and it's speeding up. And then if you add the help of AI into creating the technology, I think that is what is multiplying the speed in which you're doing it. And so, one of the things that I think you can also look at it, you mentioned in 3 buckets, there's 2 kind of broad categories for how we've seen, I want to say just AI, but when you see computers / algorithms, what they've replaced, it's the physical and the cognitive. And the physical is what I think you saw initially being replaced by, think about going back further, factories that started to have lines that had, I mean, you look at it now, what it takes to produce a car on a factory line, it's probably a fraction of the amount of people that it used to, right? When everything had to be cut and put together, and now you have these big machines and arms, and they're laser cutting everything, and you have one person that's guiding it. You still have to have people, but and so what we had was the physical got replaced first. When you think of even the Industrial Revolution, when things started going to factories, and factories started getting equipment and machines and computers, a real basic level of algorithms. Yeah. Whereas now we're seeing it enter the world of cognitive. Where does it take thinking, and where does it take understanding? And so the medical world's an interesting area. My wife and I got into a big argument. She's obviously in the medical world. I say argument, it was in jest. But I was bringing this idea up.
Y'all started talking again.
And yeah, we started talking again. And so I brought this up, and I should say we disagreed on this, and partially because a little bit of, I was listening to the book and the way he's painting it versus, her real practical mindset of being in the actual medical field now. And AI is drastically impacting medicine, probably, I think, as much as anything else right now. I mean, they're using narrow AI to map tests.
Define narrow AI.
narrow AI is just when you have programmed algorithms that are designed to do a single task, usually, or a very focused task. Like, for example, big one that they're doing now is that they're using it to read scans.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's X-rays or CT scans, that they have algorithms. And if you think about it, a doctor, depending on what they do, is exposed to a certain number of scans in their lifetime of medicine, right? Just whether it's in medical school, whether it's actual patients, they see their scans. They're putting together a diagnosis based on symptoms, based on, we see this, what we've learned. Now imagine a computer algorithm that has scans loaded to the millions.
Mm-hmm.
And if you loaded here's 10,000 healthy scans. Mm-hmm. All the varieties of lungs, different things, whatever, right? It could just be cancer, whatever. It's something like lung cancer. Then you would load another 100,000 of scans of every different diagnosis of abnormalities that they found. Here's 5,000 scans of people that had this type of lung cancer. Here's this, right? So that it can detect all of these things. Would you want your scans read by your doctor that's maybe seen, 1,000 in their life? Or would you want it being reviewed by an algorithm that can compare it against hundreds of thousands, if not millions of scans in a second, and not waiting for a radiologist to read it?
I've used ChatGPT for blood tests.
Yes.
I mean, and it's like, and my youngest son, he's had like a handful of like medical things, and I just drop every single test we do into this thread, and then I can, because what do you want from a doctor? You want to sit there and be able to ask questions, right?
Yeah.
And half the time they don't have time. There's some great. He's seeing a really great doctor who spent a lot of time with us. But when I have that thought at 1 a.m. in the morning, of like, I wonder about this, and it might be a dumb question, but you don't feel dumb asking the.
It makes me wonder what URLs I want to go steal now that other people are going to want. Dr. AI. What's a WebMD? I'm sure they're already gone.
Well, just on the amount of data side, and I'm sure this is going to continue to multiply. But they talked about a human being can read what they said. If a human being lives 60 years and they read every second, they can consume up to 8 billion words. Still a lot. Yeah. They said, but now the most advanced AI can consume 8 trillion words in a month.
Jeez.
Think about it for comparison.
So yeah, I mean, I didn't even think about that from the medical. Like if you have an AI that can like process like all the patterns of a million or whatever scans.
So I can go in now, and it's like, say, my son gets sick and he has certain symptoms. I'll put those symptoms in and say, can you look at the last results, and do you think anything could be tied? And there's obviously like, you have to know when it's wrong.
Yeah.
And so you can't take everything as like, okay, that's hard and fast truth. But what it's done is equipped us to ask the right questions to our doctors.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So more of a personalized WebMD. WebMD just said, here's symptoms. Yeah. Now you can say, here's my test results. But so my wife and I, though, we got into a bit of an argument because I said, man, I don't think I'd go into medicine. I definitely wouldn't go into like certain fields of being a physician. She was like, it won't replace doctors. And I was like, I think it will, not all of them, but I think it might replace a lot of them. It can't do that. And I was like, well, I think it can. So here's some examples. I'll give you a couple examples that come straight from his book, right? I wrote some of these down. They did a test where they took computer algorithm and they presented lung cancer cases to an algorithm. So imagine all these different tests to algorithm, and for it to diagnose these. All right. They did the exact same ones with human doctors. The computer algorithm had an accuracy rating of 90%. The human doctors were 50%.
Whoa.
So immediately you're already going, well, I think I want an algorithm to tell me whether or not this is cancer more than I want a human doctor, because they're going to get it wrong half the time.
Yeah.
So that's like one.
So because I could see, even expertise aside, I feel like this is one of those places where human beings, the way we're wired, are always going to want human interaction. Like for me, if you're like, what would you want? I would say I want an intelligent, caring doctor who also uses the full force of AI.
Well,
in measurements and scans.
Okay. But when you talk about,
but then does that mean like a doctor in the future is just gonna be like a nice hospitality?
But
like,
but so the picture that Harari paints is, again, this is a humanist perspective of the next level of humanity being transhumanism, Homo Deus, right? This kind of idea is that AI is also being designed with empathy. It's basically saying you could have a doctor that can be incredibly caring, but it also would know you. So it knows your personality type. It knows from your history. It knows from interactions, because that's the one thing AI is doing, is it's learning immediately on the fly. So it talks to you. So I think it's hard for us because we're picturing Skynet robots, and we're picturing iRobot in these movies but I mean, imagine the technology where it's somebody that's very lifelike and they have the ability to relate to you on a very human level, because they've been trained.
Especially if it's a private concern.
Yeah, it's not embarrassing thinking I'm talking to a real person.
Yep.
Yeah, that seems kind of personal. Like you have.
I mean,
that's something that you want to talk about.
I mean, so you telling me that I need to exercise more, or? I feel like a lot of medical stuff is very private.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, I don't know. I could see that being.
So her argument was, how are you not going to break HIPAA laws? And I just said, why wouldn't the algorithm just strip names off of it and still have history? So another level to this that's kind of fascinating is that Google has had for, I think, since 2008. I forget the name of it. It's like Google Flu, Google something or other. But it has been doing projects or whatever, where, and this is again the idea of it scanning emails. So I'm sure Google, every email that goes through, by the way, emails aren't even encrypted anyway. So you send an email, you just need to know it's all full plain text. So imagine all of Google's servers, if you're on Gmail, whatever, any server, it can scan every single word. And it's kind of painting this picture that we would be able to discover outbreaks and viruses weeks before we would ever know it as a human population, simply by it reads emails. And so it gave the scenario of if it knows on a regular basis all of the emails in the country that reads, and it sees the word headache and have to be off or calling in sick, or it sees certain words like 100,000 times, it sees the word headache, and then in the same time frame as it's scanning, it sees it 300,000 times immediately, that it's going to see an uptick, that it would be able to detect weeks before we would ever, doctors and physicians would ever realize that all these people are coming in with the same, there's an outbreak of influenza B, or you know what I mean? Like, so it's like painting this picture. Imagine you could sit at home and you could just contact your doctor, and it knows your full medical history. It knows your family's medical history. It knows your neighbor's medical history. It knows where you've been. I'm not saying I like all this. I'm just saying it knows all of that, and you go, I have these symptoms. How accurate might it know what you have and prescribe? And then you want to speak about prescriptions. One of the things they pointed out, and this isn't, again, so immediately I'm going to think radiology. I don't know if I'd want to go into that area if I'm brand new, thinking about it down the road. Certain areas, pharmacy. They said on average we have right now, based on pharmacists fulfilling scripts, about 50 million errors in pharmacy prescriptions every year.
That's crazy.
Imagine if you get rid of 50 million errors. Like,
that's a lot.
I don't know if he had this stat on there, how many people die from taking the wrong medications, how many, like, so I don't know that we're thinking big enough and broad enough.
Yeah.
Do you feel
about
like AI
this
would be like a weapon against big pharma and all the corruption and greed?
I think it's going to be a weapon one day. just like the bomb.
Yep.
It's going to be a weapon in someone's hand. The scary part is if it's a weapon that's not controlled by AGI, but in someone's hands, how do we trust governments? How do we trust humans? How do we trust people that they are going to put guidelines and they're going to follow them?
Well, that's what I was talking about, like the need for some sort of guidelines. I don't know how we're going to get
like
that.
we did with social media?
Right. Or not.
I'm just saying we haven't done it with anything.
I know.
The internet, social media, and even when we tried in Congress, it was a fail.
I know. One thing to note for the future on some of this, we did a lot of talking about deep learning, which is that kind of more technical term for this idea for AI to be able to read scans and all this different type of stuff. One thing to note for the future, to achieve some things that we're talking about, with how fast and recognition, there's going to have to be some advances in computing technology. One term to look out for is called quantum computing, which I think there's one quantum computer here in America. I think it's owned by, it's either Google or IBM, and it's called Azure, I think is what it's called.
Azure.
Azure. Thank you.
It's probably Microsoft. Because that's Microsoft product.
And to give you an idea of the power of quantum computing and its ability to compute data,
it's insane.
The world's best supercomputer now, with some of the encryptions on, let's say, files or digital encryption, different things like that, would take hours to break some of those things. If you were to apply a quantum computer to the same types of algorithms and things like that, they say it would take seconds to break some of the world's most encrypted files and things like that. So just the power in computing. Now, we're not quite there yet. There's still some technology that needs to be developed for quantum computing to be a little bit more ubiquitously used. One of the big challenges is energy consumption. So it takes a ton of energy to run all of these different types of things.
What is it? Is it a mega super Azure? What is it called?
What?
A quantum computer?
Quantum computer.
What does it look like? I'm picturing like a transformer.
It kind of looks like a transformer. I'm going to show you a picture. I'll pull it up. It kind of looks like
you said the only one's in Missouri?
It's not Missouri.
No,
Microsoft.
Microsoft.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, let me pull it up. It looks...
It reminds
When
me
you say
of the,
uses
it reminds me of the
energy like this-
technology that you got to imagine when they had computers back in the 70s and 80s, and it was, remember, it used to be the size of a room,
and
now
looks
it's
like a
on phone.
transformer.
Crazy.
This is IBM's new 53 qubit quantum computer.
That's crazy.
It's crazy.
How about this? I will throw out a few jobs. I'll just throw out some careers and just want to get your thoughts and feedback as to like one significant one that was mentioned in his book was stock traders.
Oh yeah.
He says the amount of time that it takes people to recognize, get data, read it, and make decisions on stocks changes the financial industry. He said they can process data in microseconds and make transactional changes.
So dumb question. You feel like stock traders are already using this? Like doing what you did,
Oh,
just throwing it in there?
100%.
Yeah.
They're using AI.
Yeah.
But what happens when you remove the human element
Yeah, I
and
was
then
gonna say,
AI
it's like
is actually trading
they're
for
the
you
ones choosing
based on data that's quicker? At that point,
So
you don't even
it's
have a
like- yeah,
human
yeah,
element
I mean,
of
it's like-
trading stocks.
Like,
very
when is the app
passive
going to come
stream of
out to
income.
where it's like you give the app
This
full
is what-
control? Here's how much money I want.
Here's
you
my
to,
money.
Robinhood.
And
Well, I know, but like you know, in Robinhood, you still have to go in.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
You know,
but
but like, when is it going to just?
it's
Hey, this is kind of the parameters. Because again, I think right now, probably for most of us, when we set parameters, that's about all we can set parameters for AI and give them information. And it's like, when is that going to happen to where it's like, here's my parameters, here's how much money I have. Go
make
money.
me this money.
So then
Yeah.
at some
Passive
point, would it
income.
become like if everybody starts using that,
Then
then
it-
like the competition's level, does it become like where there's bigger and better AIs where you pay more and more money for more like supreme
yes.
AI
Or
traders? Like
does
what
it
is
just change the whole
Yeah,
entire
I think
market?
it's-
I mean, does it blow away the
I think
market?
we don't
You
know.
don't have a stock market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that has to
I agree with
change.
you. You don't know.
I just think, but if everybody has access to it, then
This is
everything's
where
trading.
this is where I always go back to, like, I wonder what the conversations were like in the Industrial Revolution of like, does this mean, and how many things they'd name that like we don't do that anymore.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like that
Yes.
that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And
A couple
That's a good point.
jobs that he just threw out scenarios around. Okay, and then I'll give you a list of ones that are most likely to be done away with, I should say, by 2033, based on some study he had. He brought up, again, stock traders, radiologists, things like that, data scientists. Don't think I'd be a data scientist today. I don't know that's. It can think about how it can take all the data and then it can concisely synthesize it and give you. That's what the humans would do.
And give you
read
graphs.
data.
And give you graphs and charts
Why
and
do you-
pie charts.
I don't think
and
I'd be a data scientist
all the
today.
things.
I'm just throwing out ones that I'd watch out for. This one I don't know that you could ever, but it was kind of crazy. He talked about teachers. It seems like there's such a human element to teaching humans.
I feel like similar to what you said about a doctor. Like you want that
Yes.
personal.
But this,
Kind,
so
but-
again, I don't know.
What are we not thinking?
He's
what
painting
are we,
a picture of imagine a robot that can specifically can teach you what you need to know in a way that suits only you, that a single teacher could not do, that has the emotional response, that knows you, learns, adapts from you, and then knows how to teach you in a way that you can receive and actually learn, versus a single classroom, one teacher. We've all had classes with teachers that were just, gosh, they're awful. They just make everybody do this, and it doesn't work for some, and it works for others. So specialized teaching, I mean, that's crazy. Police, again, we've seen iRobot, or what's the movies that have the full police forces that go out there.
Minority Report.
Yeah, like some of those. But I mean, he was like, no more. Imagine it was like no more emotional responses toward people groups. Just the execution of the law. And I also think, no mercy either. So you get pulled over, and they're not letting you out of it either.
Nope.
You know, I mean, which if it's State Highway Patrol, I think they are AI. I mean, the State Highway Patrol, you ever met them? They're AI. They don't ever let you out of a ticket.
Unless they move their slider to like 30%.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. Adjust it.
Yeah, just the slider a little bit.
Customer service call centers. I think they're going to be gone at some point. I think, or at least if you had 100 people in a call center, it's going to be down to 10.
But you wouldn't even know, though. I mean, you could call in.
Whose voice might it be? What's her name? Who was it?
You know about Scarlett Johansson?
Yeah, Scarlett Johansson.
Yes. And with
There's a lawsuit against, or was trying, I don't know if it's a lawsuit against Sam
Altman and OpenAI.
Sam Altman, yeah.
They just released
Stole
a
her
new
voice.
model, yes.
So think about that. Music, I won't even go into that. I was sharing with you guys kind of a weird scenario story, but music is such a creative thing. But I don't know. You would say dealing with AI, it's been pretty creative on some stuff.
Yeah, I just think even with music, it's like, okay, what can it allow, what can it allow a musician to now create that that maybe they couldn't before?
Yeah. There's a lot of crazy things. So there was this study that he refers to. I don't think he did it. I think he refers to it. It's the likelihood of these jobs being replaced by algorithms in 2033. At the top of the list, 100%. So this study is projecting that you would not want to be a telemarketer or a marketer. That marketing, I mean, I think we'd see marketing as one of the biggest impacts that we've seen. I'll say this. One of the reasons why was a study and scenario that was done by Facebook. So when you think about most marketing today is now almost becoming social media driven. You know, there's still TV and media, but social media driven. This was really fascinating. They did a study. So this has kind of been proven. Facebook did an algorithm that proved that it knows us better than our friends, family, and ourselves.
I believe it.
And it did this study where it monitored the likes of a couple 100,000 Facebook users with permission. They were given permission to do this. The Facebook algorithm was able to know you better than coworkers with 71 likes. So all it needs is for you to click on 71 things that you like, and the Facebook algorithm would know you better than your coworkers.
Wow.
It would know you better. In other words, the things that you like, it would know you better than your friends with 150 likes. So you like 150 posts, and it has access to all the things that you like. It only takes 150 likes for it to know you better than your friends do. And they did it by doing survey stuff of asking friends and all this kind of stuff like that. It would know you better than your family with 300 likes. And then it would say if you have so it basically said if you have liked 300 posts on Facebook, it knows you better than your family and what you like.
Wow.
That's pretty insane. And it did a test to see if it knew you better than you know yourself. And somehow I don't know how that's possible.
Is it open? Like, can you do that?
What?
Like, if you decided you wanted to be part of this?
Well, I don't know. I just know that Facebook did this. I don't know how long ago, and it did with a couple 100,000 people, and it got permission. So, again, the point on that one was imagine the political implications. It knows what to serve you. It also knows, like, how many people are swing voters in states, and it knows what to feed up, and it knows what you like better than even the people. I mean, it's just insane. So, anyways, back to the list. This was fascinating to me. It had sports refs at 98% likely to be done away with by 2033.
For sure.
You know, they're already experimenting with a line in the NFL this year that is an electronic 1st and 10 line.
It makes sense.
That'll determine if it's a first down or not.
Baseball?
Yeah.
I mean, they've had the strike zone forever, and everybody gets to watch where the pitch is and what the ref calls wrong behind the plate. The ump calls wrong. I think about that. That's crazy, right? Cashiers, by 97% likelihood of not having cashier. I mean, we already see that in the grocery store now. Imagine they get more proficient. Where did we go? We went to Air One. No, was it Air One? We were out in L.A., and we went to, Disney. So Disney does it. It was, I think, the downtown Disney. But they already do. You can just go and you scan with the Disney app. You just scan the barcode, and you say, I want this, and you pay for it. You don't get any line whatsoever. And they're making it so you're supposed to show it to a cast member before you walk out the store. But I'm pretty sure you could easily have the technology that they know that something was scanned and paid for based on the individual barcode. If you did that and then walked out the store and you didn't.
Even just like this, the self-checkout stuff, it's, I mean, the updates that have been brought to that is, now I think it was like a Speedway. It's, you just set your stuff there and you don't scan it. You put all your stuff onto one.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, here in, and, down south of here, and then you just pay.
You probably don't remember, but that was my self-deprecating story I opened up a few messages ago with. I was so confused when I walked into a store and I put it all there, and the lady's like, and I started to try to scan it. She goes, no, just put it there. And I'm like, she just stop. She just put it there. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, look. And I looked up and I was like,
that's your
how
total?
did it do that? I was so blown away.
So think crazy. And this is 2024. We're recording this. If you think the speed at which technology is moving to go 9 years in the future and think we won't need cashiers, that's probably not a stretch.
So this is, and then this they sound very like, I don't know, whatever. But that is the part of me that wonders. Maybe it's an outdated mindset of like, is that one of those things that could have adverse effects? Relationally, like, what was it, the study that came out like last year where there was a secular study talking about the people that live the longest and like what are the attributes of people that live the longest, healthiest lives? And it was crazy, like stuff like smoking, drinking, all that was like way down the list. And even family was like third or second, but it actually the number one like common denominator of people that live the longest is, I'm trying to remember the phrase they used, but it was like interpersonal community relationships. It's like when you're in a place and you know the banker, when you know the person behind the counter at the coffee shop, and you have all these integrated relationships. They talked about the culmination of that, what that creates in your like mental health is the number one longevity
I don't
factor.
think we'll need bankers. Let me see if that was on the list.
Yeah, I don't know if that was banker, not, but like,
I mean, why would you need? I mean, how often do you guys go to the bank?
Never.
Yeah, that's probably an outdated example, but like, I mean, I will say, I've lived here long enough to where I can feel I don't know, it sounds weird, but I feel the difference like when I go to all the places that I know people and, have those little innocuous interactions and conversations like, hey, how's this been? How's that been? And
well, on this list are waiters at 94%.
Yep.
I was trying to think, like, so does that mean, like, you won't go and get like, how are you still going to get waited on? Or were you expecting to have robots who would bring your food out?
I feel like it wouldn't be that hard now. I mean, I guess robots bring your food out, but there's, like, you could scan a QR code at a table now, take you to a digital menu, order, it could go back to the back.
Yeah, you go pick it up.
And then you go pick it up.
Well, I'm just thinking waiters actually bring it to you, but I mean, what's the difference, right? They have that now. I mean, we went to Disneyland, and almost every food place you go in, you pick what item you want, you mobile order. I don't want this on it. I want this on it. You hit pay, and then when it's ready, they call you.
Yep.
So they had on here waiters at 94%. Now, think about the amount of people at a certain point in life. Like, there are some implications to this, right? How many people have spent time waiting tables that they're in college, they're trying to figure out their next opportunity, or maybe they love it and that's what they want to do. That goes away. What is the implication? Are there no jobs in between? Is there no in between anymore? How do you go from here, starting out in life, to here?
I think I'm going to go back to what Pastor Trae said. I think that it's hard to speculate because we don't know. But my hunch tells me, or my gut tells me that there'll be something. Like the ability for AI and what this is going to do. Because you have to also think about the opportunities it's going to create, either to make passive income. We've already talked about one way, stock trading, like that could happen. There's going to be ways for people.
None of us work.
Well, so I've
We're
read
all wealthy.
So I've read a book talking about very futuristic AI oriented that is one of the scenarios that it paints in the future where AI is going to, in the same way the Industrial Revolution raised the standard of living for, I should say most people, not everybody, but it's going to greatly raise the standard of living for most people.
I don't know if we lose an ability to work, I don't know if it'll make our lives better though.
I also wonder if we get rid of like teachers and waiters, how much more of practice like our relational skills will take a hit.
Absolutely.
Well, people would argue, I'm not saying I agree with them, but people would argue that if some of those things are taken away, then you have more of an opportunity to focus on the pursuits you would like to pursue. Now, the problem is a lot of times we'll fill those with leisure or things that aren't work related. But in theory, answering your question, you would have an opportunity to work on or develop those relationships that you'd want to develop.
Yeah. Don't you feel like growing up though, like, I mean, a lot of it is just, it's speculation of what like all this is going to look like, but growing up, don't you feel like a lot of your personal skills and relational skills were developed in the atmospheres that you were forced into?
School.
Like you're in school, you don't want to be there, and it's not until you look back that you're like, okay, this brought this out of me. I developed these personality skills out of this. You're in sports, maybe your parents made you play sports, whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, even with my kids, like I make them order their food at the restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Because like, they got to learn how to speak up and be clear and fix a mistake if they make a mistake. Now, I don't know. I do think that if a lot of these are replaced, there's going to be something else.
Yeah.
There'll be something else to go. Well, it was kind of, again, paralegal assistants.
Didn't you say chef?
Yeah, they had chefs. It was 96%.
I believe that though. I was telling you, like, there's a local brewery, and their whole premise is they use AI to develop the recipes, and so everything that they do, it's tweaked. When the new Chat GPT, what is it, 440
or 40
or whatever, I don't know, came out, like they posted new update, new recipe, and like they're
so imagine you take,
it's called Species too.
Is it called Species? Oh gosh, here we go. Imagine
I don't know.
Imagine you take Gordon Ramsay or a local
a brewery for once.
You have Cameron Mitchell, you've got Gordon Ramsay. They create their recipes. But I mean, if you think about it, I was telling you this yesterday. A recipe is an algorithm.
Yeah.
You put a certain amount of this, certain amount of this. You cook it this way, a certain amount of time. There's no reason that can't become an algorithm, and you would replicate, and it would replicate it to perfection every time.
Yeah.
So if you're a restaurant putting out stuff, instead of having a chef who has a bad night and makes a bad meal and it costs you, why do you need that?
Isn't it Chipotle? Aren't they like rolling out, or probably already have rolled out, like AI servers that basically your bowl just drops down and it's a robot, but
it is.
Like,
it's an algorithm.
Just drops down and puts.
I mean,
what do you want?
You know that's gonna happen. You know that's gonna happen,
and it does it.
You know that's gonna happen.
The argument's gonna be, where do you lose the human magic of like the prodigies who, like one of my favorite breakfast places in Columbus is Skillet, and it's farm to table. The menu changes every day, and they've won all these awards. And the son works at the bar, and he tells me, he says, one of the things that's infuriating for everybody in the back is my dad doesn't go by recipes. He doesn't go by any measurements. He literally is just his mind thinks this way.
Yeah.
And so it's just an art for him. It's music for him. He just we have this, and it's just perfect. And I'm like, I could see your purists being like, okay, this is where you lose.
And maybe those will be what will become the elite special. Only
But my mind goes to like, I'm gonna sit there. I'm gonna train an AI to think the way that I think. You know what I mean? It's like here's what I do. I put about this much in, and then I do about this long, and like I'm gonna do that over and over until it thinks the way that I think.
And you're gonna have a feedback loop. The feedback loop go right in the computer. How good was this? You know what I mean? So it could modify that stuff on the fly.
I do that with communication right now, right? It's like I will put, I drop 50 different emails or communication things that we sent from the church, and then I'll say, hey, I want to do, I need to communicate these things. Can you help me formulate something? And it'll spit something out, and it's like nowhere close, at first. But then it's like, okay, I like this sentence. Let me modify this. Let me do this. And so I'm giving those parameters to what, okay, this helps me, this helped me do this a lot faster. Now, I think you can tell on copy paste stuff on social media, on emails, you can tell the companies that are doing that. You know, but I don't know. I think I am a purist on a lot of things, but it's like I feel like people can teach this to be a purist.
Yeah.
It's pretty scary.
It's gonna be interesting. We've rounded well over an hour.
Yeah.
One thing I forgot I screenshot this, but this morning when I just have a habit of just hitting Apple News right when I wake up. I know it's healthy, but anyways, this was like the first thing that popped up. NBC News groundbreaking AI brain implant helps stroke survivor communicate in Spanish and English. Isn't crazy?
Well, you've seen the Neuralink, and the first guy who got it. And he's sitting there looking on the screen, and there's nothing in there. He just literally looks and thinks where he wants the cursor to go, and it goes there.
Didn't he play Mario Kart?
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure he played Mario Kart.
So it's a fascinating thing to think about. I just want these kind of podcasts to be archived.
So to see how dumb we are.
10 years from now or less come back, and it was like we were either way off or it was like, no, it was way worse than we ever thought. And what's going to change? And I think we'll adapt to it, or AGI will take us out.
Or this podcast could live forever.
That's true.
Because you'll put your consciousness into an AI, and it will just keep going.
See, when that kind of stuff, when people talk about this stuff, you read this kind of book with the backdrop of, say, a faith perspective that thinks about heaven and Jesus returning. You're just like, okay, I don't know what to think about this technology. Whatever it is, and whatever, if it was going to destroy us, my guess is Jesus is coming back right before it.
Hey,
or how's that?
Way to end this on a spiritual note.
I just thought we'd throw a little bit.
And by the way, I feel like everybody that listens to us on a regular basis knows our spiel and why we talk about the things we talk about, just things in culture. But like, just as a reminder, it's just cool. My mind was thinking about a few months ago, we got a number of emails in from people. I'm trying to remember. There's one lady in particular. She was like, "Thank you, as weird as it sounds, for talking about all the random stuff in the news that I don't have time to think about." She said, with my family and everything going on, she goes, I literally don't have time to think about it. I feel ignorant. I feel afraid of it. But y'all just talking about it helps me keep informed. She goes, and it actually creates great conversations for me and my husband to have every night.
That's cool.
And I was like, that's really cool. And then somebody actually told me at church the other week, I was like, this could be scary. I've actually had a few people say this, like, I don't watch the news. I just get my news from y'all. I don't know if that is a good a good formula. Maybe don't do that.
At least fact check us.
But, Lydia, we need to get your fact checking mic. Actually, she fact checks us sometimes. Yeah, she'll send us something. All right. Well, thank y'all. It's been fun.
Yeah.
I feel like I've learned a lot just in an hour. And thank you as always for joining us. Until next week, we will see you then. Hey guys, it's Russ. Thanks so much for listening. We really believe if we can get around tables instead of behind screens, if we can talk to each other instead of at each other, we can make the world better. To help us do that, here are a few things you can do to help. First, if you haven't yet, leave a review on Apple or Spotify and hit subscribe on YouTube. This helps more than you know. Also, if you have been impacted by the community out of which this podcast comes, that's X Church. Maybe you're local or you've been touched by the messages and impact across the country, even the world. I want to encourage you to support this work. A powerful life principle is to invest in the people and places that invest in you. And so I want to invite you to do that right now by going to thex.church/give. You can give a one-time small gift, a sacrificial gift, or even become a recurring partner. Together, let's keep elevating the conversation, thinking higher, loving deeper, and making the world better. Cheers.